I'm ready.
All right. Good morning, everybody. Welcome to this episode of Ascended World with Angela Coulter. And
Sieg, Avignone.
yeah, so we did some talking before we started, and it was just sort of like, well, where do we want to start? And I was talking about, so let's just say there's somebody in my life that I've been I was just looking at, reflecting on the reflection that it bring back to me. And it was somebody that I was looking at who, it's really interesting because they're older. I'm not going to say old, but just older. But it's at this place where I believe that they are so afraid of death and dying alone that they put out this energy of that fear, that they create that solitude, right? And then hate it and resent other people for having it.
Right.
There, that was about as generic as I could get.
Politically correct.
What was that? Politically correct.
Politically correct.
I mean, because that's really the point. The point is not who it is. The point is the actual, and that's the whole thing. Is as many. That's why I was like saying, well, I want to talk about this, but I don't want if they watch it to be, like feel like I was pointing at them. Because it's not a pointing, it's just a reflection of like, this is a collective thing. Because I tapped into this in meditation and I was looking at that and I was like, so, and I felt it like at one point, like I was looking at it and I got really sad. Like I suddenly got really sad and I haven't had any of this. Some people turn 50 and they have this whole like midlife crisis thing, or they have this whole like blah, 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 and to me, I'm like, no, this is where life really begins. Cause we did all the requirements, right? Got married, had kids, did this, did that, whatever. Now it's like, now I get to be me.
Right.
Like 100%. But I haven't had that at all, right? I haven't had that sadness or no sadness or whatever. But this morning when I was looking at this in meditation, when I started following that string, that's when it sort of like, it hit me, this big feeling of, as we get older, because we think of age as a defining factor as to how close we are to death, which is interesting. Because it really doesn't, because we could drop dead now and there's right. But I think it's a mental thing that we have learned to gauge within ourselves, right? So then I was thinking, like one of the things that has hit me off and on, which is really odd over the past couple of years, because I've had so many pets die over, I had a lot of pets die in a short period of time, was as I got new ones, not to replace them, but just new, cats, when I got my cats, that I would step at a time and I would see like the moment that they died as well as the moment that I got them, almost as the same moment, right? Mm-hmm. Because without space and time, there is no difference.
Right.
And it would make me extremely sad, right? Because it was a way of me looking at it outside of myself. Well, it was funny because I was looking at this within this person and what that was reflecting back to me. And that all came back to me because I know that this person has a cat that's, not too far from being, gone. And it's probably, she won't get more because she's getting older and just knows the reality of,
right.
Yeah, of taking care of them and stuff like that. So, and when I looked at that made me really, it was a sad moment. And I was like, wow. And that's when I realized it was collective, because it was like, it almost bowled me over. It was overwhelming. Right.
Right.
And I realized, well, so what's the sadness from? Right. And I'm like, because so if we look at it from a time perspective, when we're born, we're by ourselves, like regardless of we're being born from a mother or whatever. And even if we're twins or triplets or whatever, we still have that moment of birth where we come here and decide whether or not we're going to live.
Right.
Right. Just like at the moment of death, that's a very singular moment of I'm choosing to leave this body at this time.
Mm-hmm.
And nobody can do it for you. We can't do it for somebody else. So those are very singular, but if you think about it, how powerful that really is, right? That is the power of creation, destruction, or creation, or transition, or transformation. And it's the recognition of that's singularly ours, but the ego gets so attached to, like, do we have people who love us? Like, do we have people around us? Am I appeased by those who are around me? And it's like, so why is that? Why are we still so externalized in that? Because we will never be comfortable with death until we recognize that every moment is a birth and death, right? We choose what we do so essentially, because there is no time and space, this is where we get into the mind-blowing stuff.
Right.
That when we realize that every moment is the same as living, is birthing or dying, and the only choice of that comes from us. That there's no, like, it doesn't matter how many people are around you, how they feel about you, what your relationship is with them, what your life looks like at that moment. It's every moment is our choice of presence and singularity. And from there, I think that changes. When I went out there, it just shifted everything. It feels so different now, but it was like really important for us to talk about, because I think a lot of people are really in that motivation of avoiding being alone.
Right. It's that fear of being alone, which translates into fear of not being loved. And that comes from externalizing everything. And
that's attached to being worthy, right? Because if I'm not loved, then I'm obviously not worthy, right? That's what we believe anyway.
Right. All my fears are being recognized.
Yeah. So it's like, and we say we're okay with it, but then there's like those moments, and it's funny because then I went back to that moment when I had that big wave come over me. Like I could see that with my animals, again, back to that, like, no time, the moment of birth, the moment of death, the moment of getting them, the moment they leave, right? Because as my husband said once, and I thought this was really a great insight to have, is to, like, our pets, essentially we're immortal to them because we're here before they come and we're here after they go, right?
Right.
Typically. So what an interesting perception, right? Because that's how they see us while they're incarnate here.
Right.
And yet animals, what do when they go to die? A lot of times in nature is they'll go off by themselves.
Right.
So,
well, and we're coming to a place of global, universal, multiversal awakening, which, the natural desire is to turn inward and look and examine. And so, you could classify that as a sort of death, whether you want. And, when I look at death, I don't see it as an end. I see it as just another birth into a different place.
Right. Right.
So, I don't really see it as destruction. Whereas if you're looking in and it's the end of, whatever you want to call it, the ego, the 3D, the what, it's just the birth into a different place, or just the remembering or the realization. So I really don't think that but I think that all of this it's a natural progression.
Well, yeah. And a lot of what we don't realize motivates us, and I know you came across this a while back, is this deep-seated fear of being alone.
Right. Right. I mean, I had 3 animals die in like 45 days.
Mm-hmm.
And that was
a lot. Yeah.
yeah, not close on the heels of my dad, but, within, 8 months of my dad dying. And, my husband was gone almost for a full year traveling. And boy, even though I had other people in the room with me, I felt so alone,
Yep.
just alone in ways that I'd never imagined being alone. And that came up for me last night when I was dealing with some physical discomfort. And I was like, so what is it in that part of my body? And that's what I came up with. And I was like, oh my God, I thought I'd dealt with that.
Right. As we keep on saying, right?
Right. But I could feel that I was still holding it in, and along with that overwhelming sadness, there was some anger about, abandonment, betrayal. You know, you left me alone.
Right.
I loved you and you left me alone.
Mm-hmm.
And that was something that I was looking at last night. And it was one of those things where it's like, I don't need to hear the story. I don't want to know the story. I just, you know, surrounded in love and slowly raise that vibration to match the rest of me, because that was where the discomfort was coming in, was that piece of me wouldn't continually rise to the vibration that I was continually raising myself to.
Mm-hmm. Right.
But I do think that the celebration of self
Yeah.
raises that vibration, which then anything that doesn't resonate with that is going to really become
Right.
uncomfortable.
Right, right, which is great. I mean, and it's funny because I posted yesterday about that, going, well, so, for those who don't understand what this is in a spiritual sense, right, and think, well, this is
Right.
so very 3D to just celebrate you, blah, blah, blah. Well, no, because it's actually that practice. It is the practical living in the 3D part, which we do. We have this piece of us that's here, right? That a lot to align, like we can talk about it all we want and know it all we want, but if we don't practice it, right, unconditional self-love, then we still have a misalignment, right?
Right.
So in starting to align ourselves with that, what it is, and I was explaining in the post that I could have explained a lot more, is like, so this is day 11, right, since I started that project, right, my celebration month. And it's like this, like I've noticed that when I say, when I focus on the things that nourish and celebrate me, right? Number one, I make better choices for
Right.
myself. Number two, then I am in a naturally happier place, right? I'm in a worthy place because I celebrate and nurture myself, so that when others try to drag me down or drag me out of that place, I'm less likely to do it, because I'm just sort of like, okay, you do you, because
Right.
I'm honoring me. So therefore I'm honoring you too, because you're a reflection of me. So you do you and I'll do me.
Right.
Which takes away so much attachment, which is
Right.
amazing, right? Like, and think about there's so many things of a domino effect that has to do with this, which is really cool. And yes, any part of ourselves that is out of alignment, like look at the big, huge thing we talked about last week, the big belch of whatever that came up, about being supported, right?
Right.
All had to do with whatever was out of alignment within me, had to come back to reflect me to finally just go, let's get rid of this. Right?
Right.
So I feel like that anything like this that comes up, that's, that's what it is, so that if we just hold ourselves, which is what, this whole intention is holding ourselves at the vibration of self-celebration and self-love and self-nurturing, right? Of
Right.
acknowledging the divine within us and authenticity, right?
And if you come from that place, it's of course going to challenge those places of fear of being alone and fear of not being loved. Because if you love yourself, it doesn't matter if anybody else does.
Yep. And no, you don't need anybody.
Right.
Right. Which is sort of a death of the ego in a way, because then that's part of the ego. That's what I recognize is there's a part of the ego that was like, well, wait a minute. You know?
Well, and that's, you know, I almost said a few minutes ago, the death of the ego, but it's just rebirthing it into its next.
Its next evolution. Yeah.
Right.
I agree. So and you know, so many say, like, it's funny, they say, oh, I'm not afraid of being alone, right? But we have the accept blank, right? Underneath it.
Right.
Like, oh, I just had a major deja vu. We've had this conversation outside of space and time. But it's like, it's almost like everybody says, like, I have self-love, except for this, right? It's like, I'm okay with being alone, except for this.
Well, or I have self-love, but yet I can't eat this food, and I can't, you know, I can't really exercise, and you know, and it's like, oh yeah, I get pneumonia twice a year, and you know, it's like all those are symptoms of not loving yourself
in some way, shape, or form. Right.
Right. And I know I've been focusing a lot on in the self-love process of nurturing myself through foods and you know, because I mean, cooking is, especially when you have kids, just a beating, or it used to be. You know, I don't like this, I don't want this, and I don't, you know, and it's like, I was shocked at how I had developed this aversion, which then translated into not nourishing myself through the foods. And so that was something that shifted this weekend. And in the process, some physical things came up from that shift, which, you know, again, just more cleaning house. But it's like, you say you love yourself, but yet you treat yourself in a certain way, or you accept certain limitations in yourself.
Right. 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 I was looking at that too, because I was like, okay, so what else is there for me to shift? Right.
Yeah, I feel like stuff's already shifting so much, almost I cannot have a conversation.
I know. That's why I'm just sort of like, yeah, I hear you out there.
Yeah, it's like the words are just hard to put together at the moment.
Yeah. Oh yeah, look, there's the yawn.
Yeah.
Ooh.
Well, and I've found in this whole process is the sense of freedom I'm feeling in my body.
Yeah.
And it's like, that's when, you know, again, any discordant energy comes up in places in my body that isn't free yet.
Right. Right. And so that's funny that you say that, because I was looking at that too this morning, right? Because I was looking at specifically not why, but how do I shift away from this extra weight that I would like to release, right? Which
Right.
I'm not in the self-loathing thing about it. I'm totally in acceptance of, okay, I am where I am, but I'm like, but for some reason, like right now, it stands out to me like a sore thumb. So there's something for me to look at, because I'm like,
Yeah.
or shift, there's still something. And I feel like this is related, because this is what all came up around when I was looking at, you know, what else to look at. And I'm just like, because it's never going to be anything that is a diet. It's never going to, because I'm already like, I already eat well. I, you know, exercise, I have a healthy lifestyle. Like there's so many things that I'm like going, and I know like I've gone through periods where I've tried to, and this has just been over the past 9 years, off and on. Like I've lost gain, lost whatever. And then I'm just like, so I don't feel like I need to go on some crazy starvation diet.
Right.
I don't feel like I need to go on some because I already eat really healthy and well-rounded and organic and natural and a good variety of fruits and vegetables and, you know, and proteins and all that kind of stuff. And I'm like, okay, so then and it's like, okay, so my blood tests that I've had over the past couple of years all come back normals pretty much. So it's like, there's nothing like out of whack that can be picked up, or that I haven't gone into any further testing on. But I'm like, so energetically, there's still something out of whack. for me to center. And I'm getting that there's none of that is really going to give me the desired outcome.
Right.
Right. So, except for maybe 5 minutes, it'll last for 5 months or whatever, but then it'll come back because it's for me to flow through. Right.
Right.
And, you know, I went through this whole thing, and this is what I tell people. It's like, okay. And so I've come to a place where I accept myself for who I am and where I am, and as beautiful and amazing and divine as where I am now. It's just that it was funny looking at saying, okay, so what else is there to look at? It's almost like I saw that suit of weight, and it was like, yeah, so that's something that I'm being shown is it's time to let that go.
Right.
So I think, and this has to do with, like you were talking about the body thing and whatever, and I think this is all connected in some way.
Well, I know since I've started this self-love, self-awareness, self-nurturing, self-celebration, it's like I've lost almost 2 inches off my waist.
Oh, wow. That's cool.
And I can feel, and you know, I've shifted some things, like I've been doing the restorative yoga.
Mm-hmm.
And I've shifted the way I think about food and the way I look at food, and just a whole different awareness. And it's like, I don't know, just certain habits have fallen away. So
Yeah.
and that sense of freedom that I feel within my body, it's like I feel like my muscles are working differently. That the aging process just seems to be not here.
Right. Well, and that I totally am in line with. Yeah, because I don't feel like age. I never feel like there's anything I can't do because of my age at all. Like,
Right.
so, yeah. And I'm just like, and it was so funny because it was really funny how many people over the weekend, when they found out like it was my 50th or whatever, were like, oh my God, I had no idea. Like, I would never have guessed you were 50. Like, you know? Even at the restaurant we went to eat at, the waiter's like, really? I was like, yeah. Like, okay. I was like, well, thank you. But, you know, and then doing my video last week, I was talking about aging.
Yeah. You look good for 50.
Yeah, right. Well, no, and somebody said, well, I would have never guessed. I thought you were in your late 30s or whatever, you know, like, and you know, one of the people that was watching, she said, yeah, and I'm 51. I didn't realize we were about the same age. So the thing is, and so like, and so I've gotten all that licked. And so I like, all right, there's this one thing that's there, right? And it's a weight, right? So it is a weight. So it is whatever weight that I haven't let go of yet, overall. And it's not that I feel bad, because I don't feel bad. I feel great.
Right.
But it's almost like it was shown to me as, okay, now it's time to let this go, you know?
Right. I mean, I've known for a while, gosh, since before we even went to Peru, that, you know, caffeine just didn't serve me.
Mm-hmm.
But I had all these fears about, oh, the headaches and this and that. And I, you know, I cut way down, and then it's just been this past week, and I realized that it makes me feel worse, not better. So today's my second day without any caffeine, and I tell you what, I feel amazing.
Mm. Yeah.
And I know you don't do caffeine.
No, I don't.
But it's one of those things where it was like my guidance kept telling me, and I kept believing different. And finally, it just got so discordant and just out of sync with me that I was just like, I can't do that. I can't do that anymore.
Yeah.
And it was huge.
Yep. Yeah, there's so much shifting while we're even talking. It's like,
oh, I know.
I'm like, I'm so quiet. I'm just like, yeah, well, I hear it. I feel it, and I'm just watching it. And I'm happy to just let it all go.
I know. It's like this. It's almost, a lot of times it feels like a wave, but to me it just feels like a gentle, consistent washing through.
Right. Right. And I look at, interesting, because the other thing that I look at is the whole house thing, right? And how that all came back up again last week, right? How funny is that? In the
I
middle
know.
of this, in the middle of my whole like self-celebration. And I'm like, so that's not a coincidence. There are no coincidences, right?
Right.
So yeah, funny enough for anybody who's listening or whatever. So I know I've talked about the DOTs buying my house. And so I've gone through this whole thing. I found this house I fell in love with. And then, we hired an attorney, and the attorney said, yeah, we talked to the engineering companies. He said it's not going to be till the end of this year. So then I sort of like put that off. And then I readjusted. This is how things are changing, like literally day to day right now. And so, in the middle of my, self-celebration month and the celebration week leading up to my birthday last week, it was like, my husband comes in one night, and so then I go back to the real estate agent. I was like, yeah, I guess we're not gonna be able to do that right now, and And then Scott comes home, like, I think it was Thursday night, and he goes, so is this what I think it is? And I open the letter, the one that I texted you, a picture of, and it's like, yeah, they're ready to roll. And so that, what was funny was, with all this stuff going on, there was another little bit of discomfort of really letting go, right?
Right.
And saying, all right, that house, not that house. But I was like, wow. And I did say at one point, I think it was Friday, I was talking to Scott, and I said, I'm a little bit thrown. And I have to readjust again, because I just readjusted from one space back to okay, it's going to be another year, back to no, it's now.
Right.
And so, and I don't know, like I'm waiting to hear back from the attorney to find out, because since they're signed on already, which is funny that we just signed on our attorney literally the week before. Right. So he's said that they'll call those people and, get back to us and tell us all the updates are and stuff. But in the meantime, I had to go back and look at, okay, what is there that's still residual? Now think about this. My house, though I've gone through the mourning and release of all of what it represents to me over the last several years, there's still obviously a little more, because I was a little uncomfortable, but it really was the back and forth. Next year, tomorrow. Next year, tomorrow.
Right. Right.
But that's about that being present and allowing the stuff to flow so dramatically in every moment that I'm like, okay, that really forces the non-attachment, right?
Right. And I think that's where we are with everything.
Yeah. So, and that's connected to this in terms of, if we believe we are alone, meaning lonely, then we are still attached to the creations we have outside of us, right?
Right. Right.
Because I realized that part of that, letting go of the house and being in between and not knowing, what's next yet, consciously, even though I do know from the bigger perspective, it's a little scary and discomforting, like to the ego, because there's no foundation, right? Because the house is your foundation, right?
Right.
It's your foundation. And it's like, huh. So that was good to be looking at all that. And I'm good, and I'm pretty good at it.
Go ahead.
But it's so little, it's so little. But I'm like, obviously there's still some little like discomfort in there, so.
Well, and if you think about the celebration of self, if that's the only thing that you attach to, everything can fall away. Right. And you're never alone.
Right. Right. Well, because it's all celebration, no matter where you are, no matter who you're with, whether you're by yourself, with other people, whether you're in a house, whether you're someplace else, on a mountain,
Right.
It's, when we get attached to things like our children and our spouses and our parents, right? Like you're talking about your dad dying and and our pets, because we find comfort, the ego finds comfort in that feeling of the space that we believe we have, the lack, that's that hole again. That's still a hole that we believe we have.
Mm-hmm. Right.
And so what's interesting is we have such a culture and such a world set up that we base our beliefs on love having to do with need, right? So people
Right.
believe that if we only love somebody if we believe we need them, or it's romantic to need somebody, or like you know your parents or your children or your spouse or your animals to feel complete and valuable and worthy, and because we feel like we have to be doing something which involves interacting with something outside of us to be worthy. Are you with me? I think you froze. All right. So that was fabulous. Perfect. Again, like Sarah said, was suddenly she froze up and I was like, and suddenly I had stopped the recording, but I said to myself, and suddenly I'm alone. Which I thought, wow, that's just perfect. And the funniest thing was, I didn't even text you right away. I was just like, okay, well, I'll pause the recording. I'm going to go to the bathroom. I'll refill my water, blah, blah, blah. And you were just getting back on. And I was like, yeah, well, and that's the whole acceptance thing, right? I was just getting ready to text you when you got back on. It's like, okay. And here I am.
Yep.
I'm going to go take a break.
Had to pop out for a minute.
Obviously. But yeah, that's the whole like thing that we are, and no matter how much we say we're done with it, we still have these really deeply embedded habits of believing that we need somebody else to show us our value, to reflect back to us something, to whatever, so that if we feel like they are removed from our reality, like maybe I need Sarah here to have a conversation. Then all of a sudden we're like, well, no, like, no, this is unacceptable or whatever. And so, we look at that and look in our relationships and look at how we act from need. And so many times
Right.
or we act from this place, this really subtle subliminal place of, well, I'll do this for this person so they'll be with me, right?
Right.
So they'll
Or
be,
then they'll do this for me.
and then they'll do this for me and I'll be with them. And then we'll still have that, that connection, that
Right.
meaning that we'll still be together. And wow, there's just so much of this entanglement, right, that we've embedded. And I was talking to somebody about that a week ago, about how complex that whole external valuation
Right.
has become, right? Because we it's so deeply embedded that often we don't even recognize we're doing it, because even when we're very conscious of everything, because it's like, well, our kids, right? Well, there's a societal expectation of what the relationship is supposed to be with our kids, our parents and kids, right?
Right.
Mothers and children, fathers and children, whatever. So in our minds, we believe that we've allowed ourselves to believe that having that relationship is what makes us a good person,
Right.
a good mother, a good father, and then thus making us a good person by being that good whatever, right? And then like our kids do something, or they have problems in their lives, or they have issues in their journey, and then we believe because of that it makes us less valuable, so then we want to do stuff to help them, not because we really have that motivation of just like coming from self-love, but and not that we don't love them, but from this place of saying, oh, well, I want to help make it better, partially, though the ego does not want to look at this, partially so that I can feel better about me.
Right.
And the kind of parent that I am, because then they turn out okay.
Right. Right.
Right. And it sounds really ugly to say it, but it's what we think it's what we believe subliminally.
Well, and so much of society is based on that. I mean, I was cleaning out some files and I ran across, in the state of Texas, you have to have some kind of driver's education.
Mm-hmm.
And you can either go to a driving school or you can do parent-taught driver's education.
Right.
Well, parent taught's much cheaper, so that's what I did, times 3.
Right.
And it turns into they then can hold the parent accountable for 2 years past when they get their license. So I had to hold on to all the paperwork, and it was all this kind of stuff. And I thought, how can they hold me accountable for decisions and choices and things that another person makes when you're not even there?
Right. Even if they had gone to driving school. So
exactly.
Is the driving school held accountable if they have something happen?
Yeah.
Oh, are they really 2 years after? Oh, that's interesting.
Yeah, but it's
okay, well, at least it's equal.
But you know, I saw that file and I thought, oh, I'm not accountable anymore.
Right. So I'm past it having to be tied to my value as a mother.
Right.
It's like the role that I played in that. So it's really interesting. Like, we don't realize how complex and embedded that is in our personalities and our motivations, right? When we say, well, I like doing for other people because it makes me feel good, we're even saying it straight out, but we don't recognize what we're saying is, I feel like for me to value me being a good person, I have to do something for other people that makes them feel good about me. So then I can give myself permission to feel good about myself, as long as other people feel good about who I am.
Right.
Right.
Right. Yeah. It's just when you call it out, it's just craziness.
Well, and then we want to judge that, going, oh no, that's not my motivation. Right.
Right. Let's not only be crazy, but let's judge the crazy.
That's right. That's right. I know. And then we do that for our spouses, for our significant others, for our siblings, for our parents. And you just think, wow, like, look at how complex it is. And this goes back to what we were talking about last week briefly, about how it's really nice to just say, okay, let's just hold ourselves in this vibration so that all this stuff that's not this falls away.
Right.
Look at how productive it's been just doing the whole self-celebration thing, right?
Right. Well, and another way to look at the whole thing, in my mind, to diffuse it, is look how creative I was to come up with this intricacy.
Right.
And the synchronicities and the timing and the perfection of the whole thing.
Yes, that is a great way to look at it.
And it's like, I am awesome.
That's right.
So now let me take all that bandwidth I applied to
all that energy that I put into creating that complexity, and I'm going to put it into something even more productive.
more freedom, flowing, fun.
Yeah. Oh. That feels really good. Maybe that's where we focus. That's maybe the whole focus, right?
Yeah, that to me is where I've been.
Yeah. Yeah. And that's, I think, where we've been
doing yoga, and I feel the muscle tightness, like you talked about. Yasmin and how she looks at the exercise and the energy, and it's like, let that be free.
Yeah. Yep. Let me free it. And that's what I'm doing now, I guess, with the weight. It's going to say, no, let it be free.
Right.
Let me be free of it.
Well, and I don't have to be a big presence.
Right.
To be a big presence.
Yes. So, but yeah, this whole, I love that way. Yeah. Like, look at how creative I am. But, and when we can look at it without judgment, I think that's key. Right.
Right.
And like I said, I actually tend to observe very well without judgment most of the time, but I think it's sort of like, because then I'll observe myself trying to judge the observance. And I'll be like, that doesn't serve me either. You're like, okay, let's do this differently.
Right.
But I like that. Yeah. Like being able to see it. And that's part of why we talk so much in energy work and whatever about acceptance and the importance of acceptance. Because if we judge, and when we judge something, we will limit ourselves from how we see it, and how we see it. And,
right.
and if we judge something enough, we'll become blind to it because it's so uncomfortable for us. which is why a lot of us don't see this within ourselves. So I do applaud and celebrate myself. I celebrate myself. There's another celebration of me of being able to see that now whenever anything, even a wisp of non-alignment comes up, to be able to observe it and be like, look at that. You know, let me
Right.
see. Am I starting to get triggered by that? Okay, well, I'm just going to not need that. I can be free of that.
Right.
You know? And that's when our shifting, or however you want to call it, the energy work or the clearing or healing, because I don't use those healing words or anything anymore, because nothing needs to be healed. It just is to shift into a
Right.
aligned place to just allow us a different, more
Understanding.
different, a bigger picture understanding, and
Which I think supports the premise that everything's perfect.
it is. Even the stuff that we observe within ourselves that is very ego-based and whatever. And then it's like, okay, so that was perfect in that moment. And to make it perfect in a way that, you know, aligns with this vibration of self-celebration and self-love and freedom, well, then then I can shift that. Right. So I thank it for having been there and showing this to me. And now it's time to shift it.
Right.
Which is a lot easier than saying, oh my God, I hate this part of me. I've got to get rid of it. You know, because that's what a lot of us do. Right.
Right.
And that's what I always tell people is like, okay, well, you know, that has been, I think, part of, and I think, well, no, I know, because I'm glad this all came up. That's been part of the weight thing for me, has been coming to a place of being able to accept myself as perfect right now, from a place of love, in total acceptance of it might never change. Right? To a place of, well, and coming to that acceptance, saying, and I can change it because I have accepted that it might never change. You know, it's like this like weird, like non-linear, non-logical kind of thing, but it's just this whole understanding of how the bigger thing starts fitting together. It's like the whole thing with the house, right? Okay, you don't want it to happen. Okay, I come to a place that it will happen. All right, it's going to happen next year. It's going to happen 2 years from now. It's going to happen 5 minutes from now. It's going to be this house that I love. It's going to be another house that I love. Right? It's perfect.
Right.
And no matter what it looks like, it's perfect. And if I can accept all perfection, then I can create my most amazing, like what I would love and enjoy in the alignment of happiness and self-celebration, in the easiest way. But at the same time, non-logical, to accept that all the other stuff is perfect too.
Right.
Yeah, this is huge. Like, this is like, we're just hitting on all these little pieces around
Right.
But that's the whole, well, and then that comes to for us to come, it goes back to that the loneliness, the aloneness.
Mm-hmm.
Because when we fully accept ourselves as perfect and divine and whole, then we don't need anyone or anything else in our existence. Right?
Right.
It's sort of the bigger truth of, I'm always like, I'm never alone because I'm part of the whole. But then if the whole is just one singular whole, then I'm always alone.
Right. It reminds me of what I found, which I don't know if I've talked about this on here or even with you, about, you know, my concept that I love talking about is the self-actualization.
Mm-hmm.
And Maslow, who came up with that before he died, had actually found another step to that, but he never got to publish it. And that it is, once you come to that place of total and utter acceptance of yourself and the completeness within yourself, then it's integrating that into the wholeness. Mm-hmm. And being able to see everything from the perspective of wholeness and knowing that you are everything anyway.
Right. Because essentially you are. So again,
So it's the perfection you found within yourself reflected into the perfection of everything else,
right.
and the intricacies and beauty in how everything flows together, which means you're never alone
Or you're
because
always,
you're everything.
or you're always alone because there's nothing but the whole. So, you know,
Right. There's nothing but you
yeah. So,
or everything.
right. Because you are everything. Everything is you. Right.
Exactly.
So yeah, it's like that. Yeah. It's the chicken or egg thing. But the, and I've said that for a long time about that. You know, we're always alone, but we're never alone. Well, we're never alone, but we're always alone. It's all the same thing.
Right.
And so, and accepting, realizing, true realization of that is letting go of the, oh, excuse me, what is a yawn? The exclusion of the ego, because the ego has been about identity and exclusion and separation, right? So that's part of why the ego is afraid of the death, right? Or
Right.
the
Right.
evolution, the transformation, to say, because of the fear is, if I let go of that, if I accept everything as whole and everything and me is whole and everything around me is whole and me is part of everything, then there's no need for identification and separation and exclusion, which means then there's no need for me, which
Right.
means that I die or I'm reborn to something else.
Right.
Right. So it goes
Yeah.
back full circle.
And the no need for me invokes that I'm not special.
Right.
Which is the fear of death, being alone. It definitely circles back around.
The way we look at it is death is the ultimate exclusion, right? Instead of you know, like, instead of saying no, death is actually the ultimate
inclusion,
because then we go back into the oneness. Like, we
right.
don't even hold a physical representation of ourselves anymore unless we choose
right.
to, right? Again. So, you know, our attachment, our sadness, any sadness has to do with attachment, which is exclusion, saying that this is better than that, or, you know, without this,
Right.
I'm not whole, or whatever. So, yeah, this is like, yeah, so bigger than a bread box, as they always are. So whatever it is for us to get to that place, to be able to, yeah, just, there's no words. I can't even go and do something that's really succinct that encompasses the whole
Right.
thing. It's like, well, that we're always alone, that we're never alone, and that we're always alone, and that's the wholeness. That's wholeness is singularity.
Right.
And inclusion and connectedness. And in that wholeness and inclusion, oh, my head's starting to tingle. In that wholeness and inclusion and connectedness, we are singular, and that means we are alone technically. And so, and that means, I guess, we're done with the game, is what I'm hearing.
Right.
So, or what just came to me. So, and yet, when we look at things, oh, wow, see, it's getting bigger and bigger. And yet, when we look at things outside of space and time, because there is no space and time, there's something that's coming to me about something that I watched yesterday. It's interesting. And outside of space and time, there is no beginning or end, right?
Right.
So it's funny. We watched I was thinking last night, Scott and Sierra and I watched the movie about Stephen Hawking.
Uh-huh.
I forgot what it's called, but you know, the biography thing about him, which I've never really paid attention to him, honestly. I mean, I knew what he did, and he had like some cool quotes and blah, blah, blah. But you know, his PhD was about time, that he wanted to prove that there was a beginning of time. And then once he got his PhD, he decided he wanted to disprove it, that there was a beginning of time. where it's funny, and I'm like, what I was looking at, I'm going, but there is no time. Time is a construct of our minds.
Right.
So it has a beginning and an end, or it doesn't exist at all, and it's all true, you know.
Right.
But
Yeah, his thesis was A Brief History of Time, right?
yes. Well, no, that was the book that I think the first book that he published. But yeah, it was around
From
that.
his thesis.
Yeah, I think so. So it's just to disconnect from like every construct that we have, to be non-attached to every construct that we have,
Right.
to be non-attached to death or birth, to be not attached to time or space, to not be attached to separation, individuality, to not be attached to wholeness either, to be, allow all possibility.
Right.
Oof, I can feel that, and in that, to not attach to loneliness or, need or anything like that. It's just,
Well, and not to bring up an unpleasant subject, but if you look at the political climate now, it's like it's the perfect picture of becoming unattached to everything.
it sort of breaks us all, doesn't it? Right?
Unattached to health insurance, unattached to public education, unattached to the environment.
Yes. Unattached to other people managing my reality.
Right.
Right. I mean, that's how I've been looking at it, is I'm unattached. I can't even attach. I can't even attach to it, which is so funny.
Right.
And when I do find myself starting to just sort of getting pulled, I'll be like, it's an illusion.
Right.
Am I attached to that illusion, or am I just going to create it differently? And what's funny is whenever I do that, then I'll see everything sort of shift in my reality. Like, even at the national level, like the more we're conscious of it,
Right.
the more it starts to happen. So you're right. And yeah, and that's really what it is all the facades are falling down. All the things that we appease ourselves with that we're in need of
Right.
outside of ourselves is going away. Oh, yes.
So
All that in a nice, sweet little bow.
Right. Oh yeah.
Yep. All right. You ready?
I am.
That felt nice. And easy, actually. That was really
Yeah, it did feel really easy. Oh, I think we talked through a lot of the heavy lifting.
Yeah, we did when we're like, oh, I can't hold a conversation.
Right.
I just felt like a lot of expansion. And it was funny, like I didn't really need to see anything. I just kept on seeing like just or feeling. I could feel I just felt into like, oh, there's a little resistance there, you know, and it was really big collectively and whatever. It's like, yeah, we could just go right beyond that.
Yeah, I felt very much alignment within the universe, within the multiverse.
Yeah.
Felt really timely.
Hmm. Well, that's something to start the week with.
Yeah.
I just wanted to write down the thought you had said before if I forget it.
Well, yeah, what was that?
That's what I'm trying to remember. It was like,
I'll have to listen to this again.
I know, I'm gonna have to go listen. Yeah. Being able to use energy differently to create something without, free of. Oh, and celebrating our choices, right? It's like celebrate
Right.
creations we've had. Yeah. All right, cool. Well, that was lovely. I feel great.
Yeah.
Nice and smooth too. It was just like velvet cream. I don't know.
It did feel really smooth.
Yes. I know, I just combined two sentences together. Creamy velvet. That's what it felt like.
Yep.
Nice. All right, everyone. Well, stick on that and we'll see where it takes us to next week. Have a great week. Thanks for joining us. This is Angela Coulter and
Sarah Sieg, Avignone.
bringing you this week's Ascended World. See you next time. Thank you.
Bye-bye.